Welcome to the Dr. Mudgil podcast. This is episode 149, and we are at the end of September here, and it is officially fall. And let me tell you, it is officially fall here in New York. The leaves on the trees are already changing colors and, falling off the trees in some places, and actually shocking. I don't remember it happening this early, but I guess, it's this time of year. It is fall. I just feel like fall is officially, here a couple of weeks earlier than it typically is, but maybe I'm just getting old and my memory is not working as well. But anyways, it is officially fall. So I don't want to waste any time. Let's get right into this podcast. I will say though, before I get into it, is I always like to mention what's going on in my life a little bit. And I have to tell you, school is like 1 month into school. My kids started at the end of August, and it is crazy how busy kids are these days. I don't remember being this busy when I was a kid. Between like sports teams and schoolwork. I got 2 in high school, 1 in middle school. I feel for these kids. They're really, just hustling on all cylinders. And when they hustle, we hustle. So the Mudgil family is full hustle. Now, that being said, let me get into this podcast. So this is going to be sort of like a stream of consciousness-y type stuff, but I want to just like lay a thesis foundation for this podcast and then kind of like get into what motivated this. And hopefully it is fluid and makes sense. So I've talked about, I'm probably very early on in my podcasting career, a few years ago, about defining core values and how important that is. My 4 core values, they're sort of the pillars of who I am, and that's, caring, compassion, integrity, accountability, attention to detail. Those are 4 things that when I was having a midlife crisis, so reading all these books, I've talked about it in my book and, in several podcasts. I'll spare you the gory details. But, I did a lot of introspection. I was like just trying to define like what 4 things are really important to like the essence essentially of who I am. And those are the 4 things I came up with. Caring, compassion, integrity, accountability, attention to detail. And, I talk about it in my book. There's a chapter of my book devoted to core values, and I've spoken about it, I think, 1,000,000 times in various podcasts or Instagram posts or et cetera. But we're like dive into why that's important a little bit. So again, I was going through some kind of midlife crisis, I don't know, must have been like at this point, 6 years ago or something like that. And I was reading like a bunch of like sort of like business development books and like, self-helpy type books. And I think it was a book called Traction by, I think the name was like Gino Wickman. I can't remember exactly, but one of like the very important principles of this book was the importance of defining core values and how like your personal core values and your business core values should be very, closely linked, if not the same. And I was on a flight home with my family from Miami, and, we were there for a Christmas break. And I remember sitting on the plane and like I just finished this book and just really kind of thinking about what like 4 things. And really one of the things that they recommend in this book is like using like anywhere from like 3 to 5, defining values for yourself. So, I came up with those 4: caring, compassion, integrity, accountability, attention to detail. What had me thinking about this actually was I post a ton, as you know, to YouTube. So I post a lot of pimple popping videos and all kinds of other stuff. And, I love reading all the comments. I actually respond to like 90%, maybe like 95% of the comments. Some of them are just so out there that I don't respond. But for the most part, I am very engaged with the community that we've created on YouTube. And it's amazing to me that like, the same video, there's always like a few of these like comments that are like so discordant with the other comments. Like for instance, if I'm doing like a surgical procedure, I always ask my patients, hey, are you doing okay? Are you doing okay? Are you doing okay? The reason why I do that is I want to make sure that the anesthesia is like working. So sometimes like, you sort of, you anesthetize the whole area. It's under local anesthetic, but when you're digging deep or like you're really trying to dissect something out or going laterally, I just want to make sure my patient is still numb. I don't want them to feel any pain because sometimes, patients will be hesitant to say like, ouch, or I feel something. So I always like to check in with them to make sure I'm not inflicting any unnecessary pain on my patients. And most of the time, like 90% of the comments will be like, Doc, I love that you're so compassionate. You're always checking in with your patients. But there's always like a couple that come through that are like, stop asking your patients if they're okay. If they're not okay, they're going to tell you, And it's funny that like, 2 people can watch the same video and have like an entirely different reaction to it, which is a story for a separate podcast. Or if I'm, sometimes like if I'm, squeezing out an abscess, abscesses are very painful. And even if you numb them up, they're extraordinarily painful when you're trying to express the contents of the abscess. So I'll frequently apologize to my patients when I'm doing it. Like, I'm sorry. Kind of like, I'm sorry I have to do this. I'm sorry I have to inflict pain. You have to take 2 steps back to take 5 steps forward. But it's just like a reflexive thing. I just can't stop myself from doing it. It's just who I am, right? Again, like 90% of the comments will be like, Doc, I love that you're being so compassionate. Like I see that you're really worried about your patient and you're apologizing. And then there'll always be like a few comments that are like, stop saying you're sorry. It's like so annoying. Stop apologizing to the patient. You're just doing your job. And again, like none of this stuff is going to change the way I practice, but I find it just so interesting that, people can have an entirely different view of the same video. Also, we put music on all our videos. Like I love adding music and just making it a little bit cinematic, these videos. I have an amazing videographer, Ismail, who helps me make all these videos and also has great taste in music. And, most of the time we'll get comments like, hey, I love the music, or hey, what's that song? But there's always a couple that like slip through the cracks that are like, drop that music. I hate that song. I hate R&B music. Or, like I had one guy comment on like 5 different videos, like drop the R&B music. I hate R&B music, And he was literally just every video he was like complaining about the music. And I did comment to one of his posts, just 'cause I get a kick out of that sometimes, engaging with the haters. But the point is, it's not going to change what I'm doing. I like making the videos the way I like making them. I think our community, by and large, likes the videos the way we make them. And if you don't have to watch the videos, But we're developing a community, of sort of like-minded, positive individuals. And there's always going to be some haters that get through. As they say, you can please all of the people some of the time, and some of the people all of the time, but you can't please all the people all the time. And that's just reality. Just in dealing with the world. But then I kind of bring it full circle. The reason why like core values are so important is because I rely on those core values. I care and compassion is a very important part of who I am. I'm not going to change. I'm going to ask my patients, hey, are you doing okay? I'm going to apologize to my patients when I feel like I'm hurting them, even though I can't help it. But, I feel bad having to do that. I'm sorry that I have to do that. I'm sorry I have to do this as part of my job, but it's part of the process to get you better. And sorry I got to hurt you. Are you doing okay? I want to make sure you're numb when I'm doing a surgical procedure, because I don't want you to feel any discomfort if you don't have to. If you're feeling uncomfortable, I can always add more anesthesia and make a procedure, just easier for you to endure. That's very important to me. That's important to who I am. These, like I said, by and large, like 90+% of the comments are like, hey, they're in line with like, hey, Doc, I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate the compassion and empathy. I mean, I've never ever met someone in my entire life that I was like, oh man, that guy's just too compassionate, man. I don't like that guy. Or that gal is just way too much empathy. I don't want to be around her, Care and compassion, I think, are nice things. Being compassionate and empathetic, I think, are nice, noble qualities. And I think, most of you would agree with that. But it kind of like has me thinking about all sorts of things, back in the day, it was 2012. So what? 12 years ago when I started my fitness journey, I was, I've talked about this before, so I'll spare you the details, but I had a bet with my brother-in-law. I was 196 pounds and like 20% body fat. And we had a bet to see who was going to get in the best shape on Memorial Day. It started on Thanksgiving. And I got down to 154 pounds, 8% body fat. I mean, I'm like 6'1" and change, so I looked like emaciated, but the goal was winning this bet. And, I had to strip all that fat off my body. But I remember like during that process, like I was really, super focused. So again, care, compassion, integrity, attention, detail, accountability. So I set a goal for myself and I had to be accountable and attentive to the details to get me to that goal, which meant, really, being maniacal about my diet. I remember I was out with a friend of mine and, he had seen, like, I told him like what the goal was. I had this bet and like, I think at that point I already like had dropped a significant amount of weight. And, my kryptonite, I love nachos. I love nachos. I just love them. And he knew that I love nachos. And he was really trying to like get me to like break, my momentum here. Not in a bad way. I just think he was like, come on, you're being so boring. Let's hang out. Let's have some beers. And like, and he ordered nachos and put them right in front of me. A tray of beautiful looking nachos. I mean, these things look delicious. But I didn't eat a single nacho because, again, I was being attentive to the details that were to get me to my goal, part of my core values. And, that the point is this incident with my friend was like a blip in time, right? Like, so this was like a couple of hours of my life, but I had a longer term goal. I have to sleep with myself every night. When I lay down to bed, I have to make sure I check all the boxes that I need to do. And my core values, being true to my core values and setting a goal, being attentive to the details and to get me to my goal, I had to do what I had to do. I just didn't, I wanted to eat the nachos, but I knew if I ate the nachos, I'd be taking a step back from my goal, right? Another example, I was out, I had a family get together this past weekend. And, it's a family get together. It was my aunt's birthday. There's like cakes everywhere, lots of food. And, I'm pretty maniacal when it comes to what I consume. I mean, I do eat dessert. I love dessert, but there's a time and place for it. I save it for certain times. And I didn't want to eat dessert at lunch on Saturday when I was with my family. I just didn't, it would just have broken my stride, the attentiveness to detail that I employ to get to my goals, which is now to, get bigger and leaner. That's my goal every year. So I didn't want to have dessert, because I knew I was going out with my wife later on and I might have a little bit of dessert at dinner, whatever it was, it just didn't fit into my macros for the day. And my aunt said to me, or my aunt, my cousin, everyone said to me, is like, hey, listen, just take a break. You don't have to diet every day. Just don't diet today, But again, they're capturing me in a blip of time. If I did that every day, no matter who I'm with, and they're like, hey, eat this or eat that, or, if they're eating fast food, hey, eat fast food with me. If it's not in line with what my long-term goals are, again, what my core values are, which are the foundation of the goals that I want to attain, I have to live with that decision that night, right? When I go to bed, I'm like, shoot, I had so much dessert today, or I took a step, my diet was out of control today. And, not that it's not the end of the world if that happens, but you have to have the discipline, to get your daily wins. That means, getting your macronutrients in for the day, not eating certain things, getting your exercise in, all of those things make a difference. Again, that's the accountability and attentive to detail of my 4 core values. So the point is, defining core values is a very important thing because it enables you to fall back on principles that define who you are. We all have different core values. They don't have to be the same. They shouldn't be the same. That's what makes the world such a beautiful place. All of our distinctly different human qualities that we share. That makes the world a beautiful place, But, for me, those are the things that I define as important for myself. 6 years, or I think it might be 7 years at this point, maybe even 8 years at this point, since I defined them, they're still the values that define me. And it doesn't matter if someone says, hey, doc, it's so annoying that you're asking your patients, are you okay? Or you're apologizing all the time. Hey, that's who I am. Care and compassion is important to me. And having defined those core values, listen, it wouldn't have made a difference if I hadn't defined those core values, to be honest with you, because that's just who I am. But really thinking about who I am, putting it down on paper, and it allows me to troubleshoot issues in my life. Hey, wow, is that guy right? Is that person, are they saying something that, I should really be paying attention to? And the answer is no, and they can say what they like and they don't have to like what I'm doing. But for me, it's the right thing to do, to check in with my patients, ask them if they're okay, to apologize to my patients if I'm inflicting pain and I can't avoid it. Those things, are in line with who I am at my core. And, being caring and compassionate is an important part of that. So I know that was a mouthful, and I hope that all made sense. But the point of the story is, take the time to define core values because they will help you troubleshoot issues should they arise. And, it allows you to set better goals for yourself and, more importantly, to fulfill and, win the day and, win at life. When you achieve goals, it's a very empowering thing. So with that, I hope you all have a wonderful, restful weekend and are just ready to crush the week ahead. Let's get it.